Okay, no more being coy about this. We've got a bunch of shit to go through. Electronic Arts. The legendary California-based video game publishing/developing enterprise that's one of the most successful businesses in the businesses. Just like Rockstar, these guys are a household name. Like, if you break into someone's house, run up to the first schmuck you see before they can call the cops and ask them about EA, they'll be like, EA. And then ask them about Madden, and then they'll be like, EA. Being around for over 40 years has definitely helped cement that status, but that status has also been plenty besmirched by a variety of controversies. Longtime viewers will know they've been in my peripheral for a very long time. Hell, they would have made a great addition to the whole company controversy branding if I was still doing that. Here, I'll show you.
These guys were Electronic Arts,
and they caused a
company controversy.
It's just, I wasn't exactly sure how to cover them. Their output is considerably larger than those Scots, and their litany of controversies is considerably more lopsided within their history. I eventually figured out that they would receive the Rockstar Saga treatment, but does it sound like I had a plan of action when I announced that 2 years ago? At the very least, I didn't know where the saga was going to start, and, thanks to more recent events, where it's going to end. I'm recording this before all the regulatory crap for their acquisition gets wrapped up, which, as a side note, I don't see any hurdles considering the people involved. But whatever ends up happening, I figured we'd get this party started before that layoff tracker gets a fresh This surprise turn of fate did inspire me to really dig into EA's lengthy history and try to understand how exactly they got here to begin with, how they turned into the twice voted worst company in America, and whether or not they actually deserve such scorn. And like any good corruption story would do, we need to establish the king's origins and the key figures that made up their square table, so these first few episodes will range from EA's early history up to what I would consider the turning point that brought them down this path of darkness and money. Because yes, the answer's money. It's always money, but it's also always a bit more complicated than just money, and a history worth going over. But do not fear, peasants, for there will be the usual game controversies and drama mixed into these affairs. Just keep in mind that most of these earlier controversies were more incidental to the saga rather than a key part. Also, I had to cut out like 99% of Martha's contributions. Sorry, honey, but if you can't tell the difference between FIFA and Madden, what the fuck have you been doing for these past 2 years? Anywho, with all that build-up out of the way, let's build us a future Fortune 500. Electronic Arts was birthed into the world through a human vessel known as Trip Hawkins. Trip was a young and budding entrepreneur who had a fascination for games and had seen the platform that would house the future of entertainment, the home computer. This revelation occurred during the 70s though, and he estimated it'd take about until, say, 1982 or some other far-off year until the home computer market would hit its stride, but he was determined to follow this path. Armed with a Harvard education, as well as a Stanford MBA, he got his start by joining up with some fellow computer nerds in Santa Clara Valley at some new startup headed by the biggest nerd of them all, Steve Jobs. Yeah, I didn't think that they'd intersect with another controversy story for a good while either. At least this time I don't have to bring up slavery and kill the mood. I think. Trip honed his business and design acumen at Apple over the next few years, helping place the Apple II computer into the business market and contributing to the development of the Lisa computer. His early involvement with the company and its stocks set the guy for life, but he still had that dream at the forefront of his mind, and his good fortunes were yet to subside as by then, both computers and computer/video/arcade games had gained a lot of traction in pop culture. He split with Apple for good in the spring of 1982 to pursue that computer entertainment dream, getting some help along the way from one of the Valley's most notorious venture capitalists, Don Valentine. Now that's a guy who saw the future of entertainment, if his investments say anything. Anyway, Tripp shored up in an empty office space provided by Valentine, funded his new baby with a chunk of his Apple stock profits, and got a lot of people on board his new venture. Like his old uni buddy, Bing Gordon, Richard Melman from VisiCorp, some former Apple co-workers, and some folks from Xerox PARC, or PARC as it's now known as. Even the other Steve at Apple got a spot on the board of directors. By the end of the year, the group had raised even more funding, moved into a much larger office space in San Mateo, and Trippy Boy finally completed the business plan that was going to take him and his cronies to the top of the entertainment world. Thus began the legacy of Amazing Software. Do you think the prince will switch back to that name when the deal goes through? Hawkins and crew put that business plan to the test after deciding on a far better name, and one can derive this plan's thesis from it. Electronic arts. See, Hawkins had envisioned a games industry modeled after other major entertainment sectors, particularly the record industry. EA would have most of their early games developed by external contractors, as was common in computer game development at the time, but after witnessing the eccentricities of Apple software devs, he felt that these contractors should be treated like any worthy artist should be, or software artists in this case. They'd be assigned a producer to keep in touch with or assist in production, receive some kind of royalty rate for any sales made off those games in addition to the contract fee, and be provided with the necessary tools and machines to craft those games and port them to other systems. Completed games would be packaged in an album-like cover box and prominently credit the software artists involved, outside and in, really emphasizing the idea that they were the true rock stars of the games industry, but not that rock star. It felt like a more sophisticated approach to what those former Atari folk were going on about. An analysis Hawkins wouldn't necessarily disagree with, but let's not split hairs here. Instead, check out this sick-ass poster. Yeah, speaking of hair, this and the other poster asking if a computer can make someone cry may be the most enduring image of EA from this era. They certainly gave these artists the Rockstar-style glow-up. Again though, not that Rockstar. Like if you broke into someone's house, ran up to the first dipshit you saw before they called the National Guard, and told them that this was the biggest soft rock group of the 80s, they'd probably go, "Oh, I love Sonic Youth." It's a unique way to announce your presence, and it sure caught the attention of the computer magazine press. Reading up on interviews from this era, Tripp was adamant about this approach, talking about what kind of software is bound to succeed in this market, how the computer truly is the perfect medium for that success, and elaborating heavily on the Hollywood-style vision that he had for these artists. This is all well and good, but without the games to back that talk up, these software artists would be as big as Kalapana. Luckily, they did have the games. EA Records presents EA Classics Volume 1. Pinball Construction Set by Bill Budge. Arching the Light in the Dark by Ann Westfall. Axis Assassin and the Last Gladiator by John Field. Better on the Zinnenuth by John Freeman. Mule by Danielle Bunton-Berry, formerly Dan Bunton, Happy Pride Month. And Worms by David Maynard. Interesting games in their own right, but for our purposes, we will be focusing on the one game that inadvertently kicked off EA's controversial legacy, Hard Hat Mac from Matt Alexander and Mike Abbott. Released for the Apple II, Commodore 64, and Atari 8-bit computers in 1983, Hard Hat Mac seems to be little more than a Donkey Kong clone at first glance. Having played a little bit of it, I don't think that's entirely warranted. It rips off Mappy too. Okay, cheap jokes aside, Macland's pretty simple. It's got 3 levels for Mac to traverse through while accomplishing specific tasks. Filling in these girder gaps and hammering them down, collecting lunchboxes spread across the work area, and throwing these boxes down into one of these 2 processors, all while avoiding various hazards and obstacles placed around each of the 3 levels, like the spiky-haired Vandal and an OSHA inspector. Come into contact with them, or miss a jump, or fall into a gap, or jump into a gap, or fucking breathe, Mac will perish. 3 lives, 3 levels, repeat until dead, and see how high a score that you can achieve. Again, simple, but decent. It's fine. Though if you want another comparison, some publications found it to be more similar to Miner 2049er, another platformer from this era with a legacy of its own that most of y'all have probably never heard of unless you're well versed in game history or your spine is about to crumble. Mac attained legacy status just by being one of EA's first games ever, but what it really has over the 49ers is it drawing the ire of OSHA. To clarify for the uninitiated, or anyone outside the US, the Occupational Safety and Health Administration is the government organization responsible for ensuring that various businesses, private, public, federal, have implemented and maintained safe working conditions, penalizing those who violate such procedures with modest fines, and in very deadly matters, less modest fines. They are an important institution nonetheless, but some businesses, especially those in the industrial sector, found that keeping up with these regulations was a very annoying, very time-consuming, and very expensive process. So OSHA gained a reputation for such qualities, hence their depiction in HHM as an enemy. The description literally states they have absolutely no sense of humor, and there are promo copies of the game that included a blurb about how this game will make you laugh. Mike and Matt were simply having a larf, but some people didn't want to larf along no matter how hard you explained the joke to them. And that included OSHA themselves. Per this expert from the Oakland Tribune, one of their reps took issue with OSHA being labeled as an enemy in this ad for the game, calling it objectionable and insidious, while urging readers to send their complaints to EA's marketing department. EA didn't respond to this letter, as far as I could tell, but this very same ad ended up in the San Jose Mercury News and caught the attention of another political figure, California State Senator Dan McCorkerdale. Dan's political career was generally focused in public areas, and he touted a very good relationship with the working class hard hat Macs and the like, so he was equally offended at the ad crucifying the orc protecting them Macs. He wrote up an angry letter of his own, though instead of simply having it published in the paper, he sent it to a bunch of individuals with varying degrees of power, including the manager of the department store that was being advertised, Emporium Capwell. Yeah, I bet you didn't expect we were going to be learning about San Fran Valley history today, huh? I just hope we don't have to talk about slavery. The letter displayed Dan's dismay and disgust towards the game, and he requested that the store remove it from their shelves. Now this one did prompt a response from EA's reps, who stated that they had nothing to do with the description in the ad, nor did any of the game's marketing material that they had published depicted OSHA as an enemy of the worker in any way. The aforementioned manual seems to indicate otherwise, but I think it's safe to assume that Emporium Capwell wrote this up based on a general description, so it's all the more hilarious when they proceeded to acquiesce to McQuarterpounder's request by removing the game from their shelves. This incident found Danny Boy in the crosshairs of news publications who found the ordeal to be a complete waste of time and money, to which he responded by claiming he had nothing to do with the removal. The reported follow-up letter sent to Emporium's manager thanking them for the removal seems to indicate otherwise, but the article also reported that the newfound publicity gave Mac and EA a nice boost in sales as it went on to become one of the better-selling projects from their debut lineup. Now this shouldn't come as a surprise, but yeah, I concur with this analysis. Yeah, early 80s, people didn't know any better, but how can anyone get upset at a game that's a wholesome ode to blue-collar America? Hell, even Gandhi approved of it. Motherfucker rose up from his grave for this quote and then conked back into eternal rest with a copy to boot. Hope he's been enjoying it up there. Whether Danny Boy drummed up this stupid shit for publicity or had the same sense of humor as OSHA is irrelevant, as EA went on to bigger and better things while earning karmic victories along the way after McGriddle got voted out of his position in the mid-90s and all Emporium Capwell stores ceased to exist a short time later. Now Tripp would claim in a later interview that the whole shaboopy actually hurt sales of the game, which also isn't hard to believe because while Mac may have sold well within its own class, EA's first year on the game's business was not great. The execution of that business plan regarding game development and marketing also extended to their sales tactics. Not wanting to be burdened by any software distributor middleman who'd take a big lot of their profits, they went directly to the retailers and asked them if they wanted some of their products. It was a risky move, as those distributors kinda existed to handle any of those kinds of annoying random sales calls, so it took a while for EA to get that network up and running. Furthermore, the Rockstar marketing didn't turn any of their artists into the next Chicago, let alone the next Frankie and the Knockouts, as their general customer base didn't really give much of a shit about anyone credited on the games unless they were, say, actual celebrities featured on the cover. Ironically, this poster here excluded some of the other artists who worked on these games. Maybe because they were camera shy or something, I don't know. But it's safe to say that this approach was flawed. There's a pretty funny anecdote about Bill Budge being sent on a national retail tour to promote Pinball Construction Set as if he was fucking Def Leppard and the game was his Pyromania, and not many fans showed up at the venues. At one point, he was helping sell the merch with a change of attire in tow. Well, that's not to say that these fellas didn't have any fans, nor were they any less important to EA's overall structure, but if EA was going to prosper, or even survive, they had to pivot. Something I noticed in researching their early years was how romanticized it was compared to modern EA. Like, look up any retrospective article or, on occasion, a current news piece, and there's likely to be some lament about EA's fall from grace, how they portrayed the values that they built themselves on in the pursuit of the almighty dollar, or to put it romantically, how EA had lost their soul. It's not entirely without reason, nor am I about to be ultra contrarian and say, oh, EA didn't have any soul to begin with. But what I want y'all to keep in mind as we continue through this saga is that EA was built up by businessmen. Not the software artists, the software producers, the software sellers, the software businessmen. Hawkins is a big-ass nerd, like there's no doubt about that. His big-ass nerd philosophy comes from a genuine place, and I found his big-ass nerd musings quite interesting. He's really, really good at selling that philosophy. It's also easy to imagine that he too was disappointed that Bill Budge didn't take off on a solo career or whatever this initial approach was supposed to do, but whatever approach that he and his team took in selling their games could only go as far as the dough that it brought in. And if it wasn't bringing in the dough, do you think that they were gonna stick with their guns and roses? Need I additionally remind y'all that Hawkins worked with goddamn Steve Jobs and Don Valentine, two of the nastiest folks to ever grace Silicon Valley?
And one of the investments we made was an application investment. The guy with the sweater on top started Electronic Arts. We started the company in our office. And at a point in time when they had more people in our office than Sequoia people, we asked them to leave.
The software CEOs were going to pivot one way or another unless they wanted bankruptcy hanging over them while the home computer market took a dive. Thankfully, the aforementioned distribution network, along with the help of a few key titles, would bring in the dough that they were looking for, and they didn't have to entirely abandon the artist's philosophy in the process. As EA trekked through the 80s, though, another pivot would soon be in their cards. A market that they deliberately avoided was thriving with renewed vigor, and in order for their success to continue, they would need to jump onto this new wave. Otherwise, they'd fall right off the girder and into an OSHA rep who'd find their corpse like, I don't know, $5 or something. Tune in for the next part to see how that turned out, but in the meantime, I'm just happy to finally cross this game off the to-do list. Y'all wanna know some controversy lore? Oh wow, 2 scripts? And more than 10 years apart? Yep, here I am trying to figure out how to start Season 2, and this issue of EGM that happens to feature an interview with Trippy Hawkeye plops right into my lap. It's where I got my first exposure to EA's origins and learned about Mac's beef with that senator. I even called Dan the Man a narcissistic asshole in the original script, which, I don't think would hold up to scrutiny, but his wife is a plagiarist asshole, so I guess it balances out. Not only did I get a completed script out of this incident, I had a mostly completed video too, my first one using Camtasia after getting away from Movie Maker, and then the video file got corrupted, and then my first semester of college kicked off, which is how we ended up with the Halloween episode about a week before Christmas. But hey, that's in the past, and now we're here, looking deeper into the past. You can even say we're hearing farther than we ever... Oh shit, how did I not notice that one? God damn it, Martha.